How many of your phone calls will result in setting up a listing appointment when the difference is cold calling, where you're calling out, versus direct mail, where someone is calling you? If you're curious what the answer to that is, stick around. You're in the right place. Hi, I'm Mike Cerrone with Two Listings Per Month, and I'd like to chat with you real quickly about what I call a conversion percentage on a phone call. And it's specifically what we're talking about is getting into a conversation with someone that leads to a listing appointment being set. And the variance is which method would you use to make that happen, and just comparing the two methods. So one method is cold calling, where you're calling out, you're dialing the phone out, reaching people, striking up a conversation. That is a tried and true method. The other option is to send out direct mail to that same person and have them call you. Okay, so let's talk about that real quick. You're going to get into fewer conversations with the direct mail approach, okay, because they've shown interest in their coming into you, as opposed to when you're going out, you're going to be in more conversations because you're reaching out to them and they may or may not be interested in what you're doing. And the question is, what is the variance? All right, so I've got a few stats here to share with you on this that might be interesting to you. So let's go to the phone calls first. Ever since I got into business 3 decades ago, 30 years ago, it's crazy to think that's been that long. I used to listen to a trainer who's still around. He's a phenomenal guy. His name is Mike Ferry. And I read a book, a blue book. You know, they talk about the red book all the time, but this was the blue book. And I'm trying to remember the title. It was something like How to Earn a Six-Figure Income in Real Estate. I think that was it. And Mike laid out this great strategy for reaching out when you didn't have any money, and reaching out to people by phone calling and door knocking. And it did, in fact, work. I did both. I got business by phone calls and I got business by door knocking. And when you do that, that's cold contacts. Okay, so you're reaching out to people that you don't know and they don't know you, and you're building a relationship. You're looking for people that they're interested in this case, selling a home or buying a home, and you're looking for these leads that you're going to turn into business. Okay, so the question is, it was in that book, and it's played true all the way to today, which is pretty incredible. That's why you really should listen to Mike Ferry. He's got great stuff. This is not a huge plug for Mike Ferry, but I guess it kind of is, because he really is a great guy and has great stats. A lot of people have followed his teachings and done well with him, so it certainly wouldn't hurt you. Let's go to the point, though, of how many conversations do you need to have with someone to end up setting to get a listing? Okay, that's a different question, is to set a listing appointment versus get a listing. So I want to go all the way to turning into business. So let's go there. And maybe I phrased it improperly to start. That's my goal, is how many conversations do I need to get into to get to a listing, actual signed listing? So let's go there. So traditionally, what Mike Ferry would say is you got to get into 100 conversations to get a new client. Okay, so 100 conversations back and forth, you'll get into one client. And that's why his approach is, look, get into those conversations as fast as you can and get through them. Work through that. Don't wait for it to happen. Go make it happen. So get out there and call on the phone. That would be the fastest. The next fastest would be door knocking. And then he also talked about different groups of people you might have better results with. But that was the basic premise, is 1 in 100. 100 conversations will result in one closing. So if you had 10 conversations per day, in 10 days, you could get to a closing, right? And that's the basic idea. And it works. It absolutely works. Now, there's all kinds of, when you get into the practical side of it, there's challenges of making that happen. It's hard for people to pick up the phone. They're hard for people to knock on the door, but you got to know that stat, okay? Then let's go to what we're talking about now, which is direct mail. How does that compare? That's what I'm trying to get to in this video, and I've been long-winded, which I typically am. but bear with me. So we've got the direct mail approach. Now, I have been mailing out to a high target group of people that are likely to want to sell their home. And these are for sell by owners and expired listings. And we've been sending out direct mail to them. And then some of those people respond back in a phone call and we get into a conversation. And the question is, how many conversations does it take to get to a signed listing? Okay. And so I've got a little bit of results now that I can share with you what's been happening so far. And we don't have a big enough data set to make this definitive, but I'll tell you what's happened so far. So we've been sending out mail and I've received just five responses. Okay. One was by text because I give them the option of text or phone, and 4 were by phone. So the one that came in by text didn't result in anything. They came in and then they kind of ghosted me. I just couldn't get a hold of them either by text or phone. It just didn't go anywhere. So that was dead. Another one came in. I was thinking chronological, but I should think just more generically. One came in as they wanted me to take him off the list, but it struck up a conversation. It was an expired listing. And as we ended up talking for almost an hour. And by the end, the guy really liked me and said, man, I wish we wouldn't have just hired an agent. We were about to sign this thing. And you would be number 2. And in talking to them, by the way, I decided that I didn't want to participate in that transaction because they had really high expectations of the agent. They were most stringent I'd heard. It was crazy what they expected the agent to do and know. But I guess I could have forced my way into that if I really wanted to, but I didn't. But anyway, that would be number 2. Let's see. I had a conversation with another guy who was working on property. It looked like something could pan out of that. Hasn't yet, but there's a possibility. And then I had, out of 5 contacts, I actually set 2 listing appointments. Just think about that. All right, 5 people contacted me, 2 phone and 1 text. Out of that, 2 listing appointments. So 1 listing appointment, went out there and met with the guy, had a good relationship and rapport going, and but he didn't sign at that time. And then did a follow-up for a couple weeks, and then I dropped the ball. I didn't follow up for 3 weeks. Big mistake. And so he actually ended up hiring someone else. So I actually did a video on that. If you want to hear all the details, the gory details, you can check that one out. The big mistake, I think I called it, or something like that. But the mistake was not following up, and I paid the price. I didn't get the listing. So, but I did go on an appointment. Kind of interesting. Then the 5th one, the fellow called in on the card and we had a nice conversation, and I went out and met him and signed the listing agreement there on the first appointment. So the result there is 5 conversations. I'll even include the text, even though it wasn't really a conversation, but 5 conversations resulted in 1 signed listing. Okay, so there's your comparison. Again, the older concept of make 100 conversations and you'll get 1 listing versus, and that's making cold calls, going out and finding people, versus direct mail where people call you and the result was 1 out of 5. So 5 people resulted in 1 signed listing. Okay. By the way, I used to do a lot of geographic farming, and those numbers are way higher than 1 in 5. By the way, when I would get calls in on a geo farm mailing, it was over 80% easy as far as the signups to the people that call in. But I'm going out to a completely cold audience, really doesn't know me, and I'm doing, because direct mail, I've been repeatedly getting in front of them over year, month after month, year after year. But this was just a cold audience, expired and FSBOs all over the metro area that I don't know, and I haven't been in the business for over a decade, so they don't know me, and so completely cold, 1 out of 5. Pretty interesting. Now, I'll give you a couple more pros and cons here to be um, fair about this situation. So when you make the cold calls, other than a couple bucks to make sure you got the right list and everything, it's not free, but it's very inexpensive. It's very cheap. Number one. Whereas direct mail is going to cost you a couple bucks to send out. In fact, my goal on the direct mail side is 500 bucks per listing signed. That's my goal. I need bigger numbers before I get there because I've been doing a lot of experiments. But that's my goal over there. Whereas the phone, I'm not sure. It's definitely going to cost you a couple $100 because you got to do these. If you're using programs that help you sift through and get the phone numbers to call. However, it's definitely going to be cheaper than the mail. So it's cheaper to call on the phone than to do the mail, for sure. What other comparison was I going to give you? I was going to tell you the cost and then, the speed. So the reliability maybe even. So when you're making the phone calls, you are in complete control about how many calls you make per day. That is an advantage. I told you got to make 100 conversations. Well, you can dictate how fast those 100 conversations go based on how many hours you're willing to make dials. Okay, if you're willing to crush through dials and make, I hear a lot of people saying they're trying to hit 30 a day, 30 conversations a day. And if the stats work out right, then within 3 to 4 days, you're going to get a listing. That's pretty cool. Now, on the direct mail side, I have no control over who's going to call and when. So, and then, by the way, that's another benefit of phones is you can set your schedule a lot tighter because this is when I'm going to call people. But it takes a lot more time in the conversations, but you can set when that time's going to be. Whereas with the direct mail, you don't know if they're going to call back in the morning or the afternoon or the evening or the weekend or what they're going to do on their schedule. And you've got to try to answer that phone when they call. Okay, even though I have blocked hours, but you've got to try to answer the phone when they call. If they call during your working hours, you got to answer that phone. You got to get back to them quickly. And it's going to be when they call on their schedule, not on yours. So that is a disadvantage to the mail. As opposed to the phone. Anyway, so those are the juxtapositions on a couple of the ideas there. What do you think? Which do you prefer? Have you done both? Have you done mail? And have you done phone? And if so, which one do you like better? Go ahead and tell me down in the comments below. Even if you haven't, what do you think about these stats? This 100 contacts to go direct cold through the phone or door knocking versus mail, where in our just recent experience, we had 5 people come in and 5 conversations, and we got 1 signed listing versus the 100 conversations to get 1 signed listing on the phone. What do you think about that? Do you think that makes sense? Tell me down in the comments below. If this has been helpful for you, go ahead and give us a thumbs up, like this video, let everybody know. That'd be fantastic. Really appreciate that. That helps us out. And that's it. I hope this has been helpful for you today, and you maybe learned something, or maybe you can teach me something down in those comments that you're getting different results doing something different. All right, take care. Bye now.